What is pragmatism? Pragmatism is a philosophical tradition formally created in the United States in the late 19th century, based on the principle that the usefulness, applicability, and practicality of an idea, policy, or proposition constitute its greatest merit. In other words, the value of ideas depends on their practical applicability, since they are something similar to action plans. Pragmatism proposed a philosophy oriented towards experience and towards what is useful. He valued the truth of ideas according to their consequences and their possibility of empirical verification. In that sense, he proposed that certain ends justify certain means, especially in politics and justice. If a decision is successful, then it was a good decision. The term pragmatist has, however, a history long before this school of thought. Its origin is found in the Greek word pragma, action or done, and it was used in his writings by the Greek historian Polybius, 200 to 118 BC, to indicate to his readers that his work had a purpose. Pedagogical. The creation of the school of pragmatism is attributed to Charles Peirce, 1839 to 1914, whose maxim to describe his way of reasoning was the following: consider the practical effects of the objects you conceive. Then the conception of these effects will be the totality of the conception of these objects. Put more simply, the results of what we create are the whole of creation itself. Characteristics of pragmatism. Pragmatism was characterized by the following. It was born at the end of the 19th century, and was the dominant philosophical trend for much of the 20th century in the United States and elsewhere in the West. He privileged action over doctrine, experience over preconceived principles. He was anti-fundamentalist. He did not accept the existence of an ultimate truth, therefore secular. He did not accept religions, infallible. He considered philosophy as tentative and correctable. He set out to redeem the notions of truth, good and beauty in post-Kantian philosophy. According to them, it did not matter if objective knowledge was impossible, as long as truth could be defined from our limited experience of the real. If it works, it is true. Representatives of pragmatism. The main representatives of pragmatism were Charles Peirce, 1839 to 1914. Author of over 80,000 pages on the subjects of his interest and inspiration, he was one of the great American philosophers and scientists of the late 19th century. He is also considered the father of modern semiotics, along with Ferdinand de Saussure. William James, 1842 to 1910. American philosopher and psychologist, he was a legendary professor at Harvard University and older brother of the famous writer Henry James. He created his own doctrine of thought that he called radical empiricism, and was also the founder of the psychology of religion. John Dewey, 1859 to 1952. He was a psychologist, pedagogue, and philosopher, considered by many to be the most important American thinker of the first half of the 20th century. He is associated with American progressive pedagogy, as his writings on education were particularly celebrated. He also wrote about art, logic, democracy, and ethics. He always promoted the unification between theory and practice, between thought and action. What does it mean to be pragmatic? The term pragmatic and pragmatism today has a popular meaning not too far from the foundations of this philosophical school. We use them to indicate that a person or a philosophy focuses more on obtaining results than on the details of the procedure itself. This can be seen as a value, in the sense that a person does not get lost in useless debates, but instead focuses their efforts on problem solving. On the other hand, it can be seen as something more brutal and unscrupulous, in the sense that, for a person, the end justifies the means. Political pragmatism. In politics, there are many theories and many principles to follow, and this debate is constant in most of our societies. When we talk about political pragmatism, we generally mean a position that pays less attention to theories and principles, and focuses on the analysis of results or effects. A political pragmatist is concerned, in theory, less with the how than with the what, and considers that the only measure to judge the value or truth of any political doctrine is the results of its practical application. In other words, for a pragmatist, what is true is what works, whether in politics or in other fields of life.